Good evening to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to tonight's live stream. It is a different one this time. Obviously, it's Saturday as opposed to Sunday afternoon at the usual time of 4 p.m. It's actually going to be tonight and next Saturday at the same time, 7 p.m. that we'll be live. The missus is working this evening and then she's off on the Sunday. So to spend a little bit of quality time with each other, I've chosen to do a Saturday evening live stream. So I hope you don't mind. It will give some folks a chance to actually come on who don't usually come on to the live stream. So that is the positive from all this. But let's have a quick look at the live camera from Lochmore, just on the outskirts of Aviemore. It has been a warm day for sure over the Central Highlands. We've seen a temperature of 32 Celsius. For some people, you're probably saying, what's the big fuss about? That is not particularly warm. But for folks in Scotland, that is certainly a scorcher and a record breaker. It's actually Aviemore's warmest day on record, surpassing 31.3 Celsius set back in June of 2018. Just bear with me a little second while I pull up some of the live chat. Bear in mind that there will be the tropical outlook tomorrow. It's actually going to be getting recorded just after today's video, so that will be available tomorrow afternoon. Just bear with a second here. I've got currently 16 viewers at the moment. You know the drill by now. Hit that like button. List myself on YouTube. Know that you're enjoying the content here on the channel. Good evening to Laura Johnson. Good evening, Mark. Been a while since I've managed to catch one of your streams. It's good to see you, Laura. Thanks for tuning in this evening, and not a problem. We're all busy getting on with our busy lives, so I do appreciate people can't always tune in, but it's always good to see a familiar face, and especially when you've not been on for a little while. Hope you're keeping well and enjoying this warm weather. Folks are enjoying it. There's some that aren't enjoying it. Have to be honest, I've had the curtains closed most of the day, just relaxing in the house. But once I've done this live, I'm going to sit outside, enjoy a little drink, and wait for the good lady to get home from her work. Good evening to Braemar, Ballater, D-side and Donside weather. Good evening. Sorry I missed the last few weeks. Work has been nuts. Not a problem, Chris. It's good to see you on anyway, my friend. Turbo Stream, good evening to yourself. It's good to see you. And our very own Will McKendry over in Allness nearby, tuning in this evening as well. Good evening to you, William, and your good lady. Hi, Mark. Nice to hear from look forward for the global report. Roasting hot today. Take care from Wills and Catherine McKendry in Allness. Thank you very much, my friend. I hope you are both keeping well, enjoying this fine weather. The thing to remember is, yes, it is warm and perhaps a little bit uncomfortable for folks. Some people, like I've said already, enjoy it. Other people don't enjoy it. The thing is, it's not going to be that long until the nights do draw in. We're going to be seeing cooler temperatures. This is a very short period of time when you think about it. Over the calendar year, we don't get days like this very often, especially up here in the north. Obviously, this is now the midst of the third heat wave in a row for parts of the south and southeast of the UK. Temperatures in excess of 33 Celsius for 3 straight heat waves now. Some pretty impressive numbers coming out of England and Wales, it has to be said. This is obviously the first time that Scotland's got into the real warmth. We had a couple of days here and there back in June, but really hit and miss. But we're at least enjoying actual heat wave thresholds. 3 days in a row of 25 Celsius or above. It marks a heat wave across the northern half of the UK. We've exceeded 30 Celsius in the Republic of Ireland, also in Northern Ireland as well for the first time since 2022. Glory to Jesus, tuning in. Good afternoon to yourself, or good evening, should I say. Too hot here in Devon, 31.5 in the flat. Yes, that is rather toasty, it has to be said. Certainly hot in southwest Birmingham, over 30 Celsius again, says Turbo Stream. JL saying, hi, good evening, everyone. 20 Celsius max in Portugal today. Wow. So, yeah, much, much cooler here. We'll look at the flood situation that we've seen through the course of today in parts of Catalonia, northeastern Spain. Yes, usually when you've got hot weather across the UK, and particularly the northern UK, you've often got low pressure, flash flooding, and nasty weather down across Iberia. So we will look at that in a little while. We've got Nate the Great tuning in as well. Good evening to you. 30 Celsius feels like 36 in Eastern Ontario. It's the only thing that makes minus 35 in the winter bearable. So yeah, Nate, you get certainly get the big extremes over in in Ontario and Canada for sure. Certainly, we don't get the extremes quite to that level. Good evening to my dad down in Kirkintilloch. Good evening, Mark and Lindsay. A very balmy evening from Kirkintilloch. 29 today. Took my wee dog down to the nature trail just down from our house. Mark, you'll know what I mean. Yes, beautiful day to get into the nature trail and enjoy it. So this is a live stream from Loch Morlich, just outside of Aviemore. I think it's about 10 miles roughly. I could be wrong, 6 to 10 miles outside of Aviemore. Aviemore was the Scottish hotspot today. It looks as if we hit a level 32.0, and that's only occurred in Scotland 7 times since 1961. A very interesting stat coming out of the Met Office. TurboStream saying this year has been warm as warm as I can remember. Certainly, my allotment is absolutely rock solid with the lack of rain this year. The further south you go over the UK, the drier it has become. We've also been seeing visible satellite imagery now starting to show a very dry, kind of brownish look to eastern and southeastern areas of England. Sustained temperatures well above average, mid-20s, upper 20s, even low 30s has been pretty much a mainstay since the beginning of summer, meteorological summer anyway. And we're obviously increasing evaporation rates. That's then dragging even more moisture out of the soil. And I've harped on about this for since the back half of spring. Dry ground encourages hotter temperatures. Less moisture in the ground. This was talked about in the Met Office live stream yesterday about the lack of moisture in the ground means the incoming solar radiation goes directly into heat in the air as opposed to evaporating any moisture getting drawn out of the soil. A lack of moisture in the ground encourages hotter temperatures for sure. Good evening to Richard Trott. It is good to see you, my friend, on tonight's live stream. I hope your work went well this afternoon or today, whenever it was. I'm assuming you started at 6 o'clock this morning, Richard. But only 21.3, so another chilly day. Richard was saying 23 yesterday. 21.3, the high here. Flash flooding is in the area I visit every September. Cambrose, Salou area. Yeah, Rich, I've noticed that the Cambrose, Salou area of Spain. I know my dad will probably know that area from a holiday in years gone by. But yes, deluge down there in the northeast of Spain. So big contrast indeed. Record-breaking temperature, very short period of record. It has to be said, it's only 3 years, but 28.5 broke my previous all-time record set in September 2023. Today, I kind of thought we were going to miss out. 26.6 appears to be the maximum. We had a kind of nagging east-northeasterly wind. That wind blowing up through the Cromarty Firth, allowing the temperatures to be kind of somewhat subdued here in Edmonton this afternoon. Downstairs, Dave tuning in as well. Good evening to you. A lot less humid down here in southern Spain, but still hot. Thanks very much, downstairs, Dave, for giving us a little report from Spain. Laura Johnson saying good evening to Paul James and Richard Trott. Did Laura say something there a second ago? Yes. We'll be glad when the heat is over. Maximum 30.3 today for me in Derbyshire, so Scotland been hotter than here. Crazy stuff. Yes, it has been an interesting one. This is homegrown high pressure. In other words, adiabatic compression underneath a strong area of high pressure has been allowing the temperatures to build. We've seen that over the last 3 days or so. Heatwave conditions have been met over eastern parts of Scotland, likely to be achieved across a broader area of Scotland by the time we reach tomorrow. Question mark over how strong that east-north-east, east-south-east wind will blow. That's going to be subject to question in terms of how warm the temperatures get. Parts of western and northwestern Scotland may get close to 30 Celsius again tomorrow, I would imagine. So we'll watch this space. So let me just see here. What else I can see? So Turbo streams in, I am surprised that a drought hasn't been called yet. We get our water from mid Wales, so perhaps that's why. That is probably a good point, Turbo stream, that you may be drawn water from a slightly healthier source region compared to points further east. I know Richard probably is in the drought area. Hosepipe ban has now been declared here. Just bear with a second. Just hydrating myself with something a little stronger than juice. There is juice in it, but there's more to it than that. Anyway, we've got Kim DeLong tuning in. Good evening to yourself, Kim. Greetings from the northern plains of the United States. Oh, a very warm welcome to you, Kim. Thanks for tuning in to today's live stream. You have had some interesting weather up in the northern plains states in recent times. I've noticed quite a lot of ridge ride and thunderstorms over the top of that high. It's been quite an interesting stormy summer for yourself up in the northern tier of the United States. So yeah, warm welcome. If you haven't already done so, Kim, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Everybody, I'm 100 away from 7,000 subscribers here in the channel. So I would greatly appreciate it if not only you can hit that like button, but also hit that subscribe button as well. It is greatly appreciated. So, let me see here. Yes, let me see. I want to show you a couple of interesting things here. Let's first and foremost look at the current temperatures of weather obs on the internet, and you can see that we are still talking. You know, the time is now what nearly pushing between 10 past and 7:15. We're still talking about the temperatures as high as 29 Celsius at Altnahara. New record appears to have been achieved here. As well as that, across, well, I don't know about Aknagart, but 31 point, 2 seconds. Let's have a quick look at the records. First of all, that would help. So, let me see here. Sorry, I should have had this brought up before now. So, according to what I've seen, studying the data through this afternoon, now this is records that were brought by Starling's Weather. This is from Dan Harris's private weather page. He is a meteorologist, a chief meteorologist at the Met Office, and this is a fantastic source, roostweather.com. I would greatly encourage you to check his website out. But this is basically record-breaking high temperatures, all-time records for parts of, well, all of the UK. So this is station records, all-time. You can go all the way back to 50, 60, even 100 years. But according to what we've seen this afternoon versus the records, Aviemore has broken the record. We know that firmly broken the record of 32 Celsius. The old record was 31.3 back in 2018. Kinloch in the Northwest Highlands, quite often a hotspot in the UK when you've got a southeasterly wind blowing over the Northwest Highlands. We get the downslope compressional warming and the Fern effect. But temperatures have reached 31.2 Celsius this afternoon. Figures will be finalised probably later on, but these are the figures that I've plucked out from weather obs against the records. 31.2 at Kinloch would surpass the previous record set in 2006 of 31.1, and then 29.6 Celsius at Altnahara would break 29.4 Celsius setback again 2006. Aknagart was 31.4. I don't know what the record is for there, but like I've said already, only 7 times have we seen 32 or above in Scotland since 1961, which is rather interesting. So yeah, and obviously we have already seen 35.8 Celsius. That is the warmest temperature of the year so far for the UK. That was set back in the previous heat wave. So this is heat wave number 3, first time for the UK, the northern UK, first time for Northern Ireland, or the majority of Northern Ireland at least anyway. But we have seen hotter temperatures than this weekend. But for the UK as a whole, this is the hottest weekend of the year so far. So Turbo Stream saying last July I was in Appin, north of Oban. I know that well, Turbo Stream. It was 10 Celsius and rain all week. What a difference this year. Yes, big contrast. And, last July was miserable. The last summer, really, overall, was pretty poor. Didn't achieve a single 25 Celsius or above throughout the meteorological summer last year here at Marvin Weather HQ. That being said, we did see 26 in May, but that was the warmest of the entire 2024 last year here at the house here. So a big difference this time around, even across the north where it has been quite unsettled over the summertime. We've seen ups and downs in terms of temperature, a lot more consistency in the heat and the dryness the further south you go over the UK. Now, some heat indices this afternoon, we're talking 33, 34 Celsius parts of Glasgow, up into the Central Highlands, up into the North Highlands. We're talking about the combination of air temperature versus the humidity level, making it feel quite uncomfortable, actually. And even for folks like, down in the southern United States, even for Kim up in the northern tier of the United States as well, humidity, obviously makes heat much more oppressive, much more uncomfortable. You feel a lot more stickier. It feels hotter than it actually is a lot of the time. Heat in this country actually can be quite surprising. I've been to tropical locations a few times, and what gets me is the fact that it does feel hotter than it actually the thermometer is reading, and many people I think can vouch for that. It simply in this country it can feel hotter than it actually is, and that's something that I've noticed for many years now, that that combination. We live in a small island surrounded by water. That water obviously releases moisture into the atmosphere. Back during the springtime, we did have a lot of dry air in place. I recorded some of my lowest humidity levels. Again, the period of record is very short, but upper teens and low 20s humidity level is really quite dry, especially for an island in the northeast portion of the Atlantic. So yeah, big. Lots of things to look at, lots of things to consider, and always rather interested in our climate. We do tend to have a little bit more of a temperate climate compared to many parts of the world, but nevertheless, residing on the eastern flank of a big ocean with the prevailing wind coming off that ocean, we live very close to a continent, which can provide us with lots of different variability in terms of weather. Certainly at the moment we are seeing the hot and dry. We know that we're going to see more unsettled conditions building in as we progress into the early portions of next week. The question mark is going to be, do we see this pattern that we've had for the last 4 to 6 weeks here, fluctuating back and forth, deep low pressure up towards Iceland, strong high pressure over the Mediterranean, Central Europe, that kind of flexing back and forth. But southern portions of the UK has always been very much close to that northern flank of the high, meaning that we've maintained this warmer and drier than average theme. Also extends up into the eastern side of England as well here. It'll be interesting to see as we go into the second half of July whether this pattern continues. I'm watching some developments going on in the Pacific. We are going to see the Manjulian Oscillation progressing eastwards. That is likely to change the overall pattern. We're likely to see an uptick in tropical activity in the Atlantic Basin, and that should give the atmosphere a general kick. And usually once you get into the second half of the summer, it naturally tends to turn wetter. Aidan McGivern also alluded that in the Met Office Weather Studio Live yesterday afternoon. I know quite a few folks watch the Met Office live. I tend to watch it back later on in the night time because I'm sleeping. I do night shift, and I usually sleep through the actual live, so I watch it back. But always fascinating stuff. I love their deep dive. I love the live stream each and every Friday afternoon. So that is that. We have broken some station records this afternoon. There probably will be more to come. More data will come out, finalised high temperatures, etc., etc. But let's move on then. We've seen, obviously, flash flooding across parts of Spain. This is from Weather Monitor, tweeted out 3 hours ago, of the flash flooding in Catalonia. Let's look at another video then of the flash flooding. What a contrast to the north of the UK, yeah? Or the whole of the UK, I should say. Let's see if there's other footage to show.
Las tablas de quirófano.
So in terms of heatwave days, I think there's only been 2 other years. In terms of up until the 12th of July 2025, there has been only 2 years that has surpassed this meteorological summer in terms of number of heatwave days. So obviously, depending on whereabouts you live in the UK, that threshold is either 25 or 28 Celsius. This was the scene, by the way, in Moscow, Russia. Again, this is a tweet from about 4 hours ago. Let's have a quick look at the radar then, our visible satellite imagery, should I say. And you can see here that we have those storms over northern portions, northeastern portions of Iberia. Instability within the mid-number levels of the atmosphere, hot conditions down at the surface, as you would expect at this time of the year, causing the eruption of very powerful thunderstorms. Look at how impressive these are on the visible satellite imagery this afternoon across the Cambrils, Salou region, adjacent areas to the Barcelona area, also across southern portions of France as well. We've been seeing some big blow-ups of thunderstorms here. If we look at the French visible satellite imagery, you can see those big storms over the southern portions of France, high and dry across northern portions of the country. So we've got the heat up here. Then, if you notice here, across central portions of Europe, we've got fresher conditions. We've got quite wet conditions, windy conditions across parts of Germany, Poland, into parts of further east locations. There's the big storms across parts of western Russia that caused the flash flooding in parts of Moscow. So you can see at the very edge of the visible satellite imagery, the sun is now setting over eastern areas of Europe. There's that circulation associated with low pressure over Central Europe, the high built in behind this feature. That area of low pressure over Central Europe, by the way, did bring cooler, wetter and windier conditions across the UK back 4 or 5 days ago. So this has generally been the theme. We've seen high pressure build northwards. Area of low pressure then brings refreshment, especially across central and northern areas of the UK as well as Ireland. Again, always kind of holding on to more heat across the far south of England and Wales. But then once that feature then moves eastwards, we'll see the heights build back in. We've got hotter temperatures as a consequence. Let's look at the UK specifically then at this area. You see some high-level clouds rolling into the central highlands here, even filtering the sun, it has to be said, here in Everton. You can see the Har now starting to move back on shore, anywhere from Fife all the way up into the northeast of Aberdeenshire. We've also got some high-level clouds kind of running into eastern areas of England. What's that doing, I wonder, to the temperature? Let's have a quick look at the temperatures, because we do actually have cooler, fresher air moving in from the east as well as from the west. That frontal boundary, by the way, edging into the southwest of Ireland, that's going to eventually bring the more unsettled conditions, showers, some thunderstorm activity, and fresher air. I'm sure that will be welcome news for many folks. Let's go back to the current temperatures then and see what it's showing. So there is the influence of that easterly breeze, but more importantly, the Har now moving on shore. Still got 28 Celsius in Aviemore, 28 up in Altahara, 26s in Old Bay, and also Loch Lascarnock. I've already discussed the temperatures here, thanks to the easterly flow coming up through the Cromarty Firth, keeping things cooler here. Tulloch Bridge, our first hit, still recording 27.8 at this hour. Appears to be that we've got the 26 at Oban Airport. Again, western portions of Northern Ireland, 28, 29 Celsius. The same goes for the Republic of Ireland, a little bit fresher along the south coast here. Still holding on to 30 Celsius at both Shobden as well as Hereford here. But look at the temperatures along the east coast. Rich is going to notice that. Obviously, Rich has only recorded, 21 Celsius this afternoon. But right along that east coast of the entire length of the UK, we've got only 14 at Inverbervie. We've only got, what is this, Bridlington, 19.3. And even down to Weybourne, we've got only 17 Celsius. So good bit fresher down in the East Anglia, even down into Kent, we're only talking about 18, 19 Celsius. So I'm sure that is welcome news for folks down here. But then get yourself into the interior southwest of England. We're still talking about 31 Celsius in Almondsbury, currently 30.6 Celsius. So yes, and even down across the far south, I've kind of slightly, when I've been doing these videos, been cutting the far south of the UK off, so I do apologise for that. It isn't intentional by any stretch, but you can see here down towards Paul's location in Hampshire, around about 24 Celsius. So not too bad, Paul, considering what you've had in recent times, but then the further north you go, 28, 29, and into the low 30s, which is, reasonably warm given the fact that it's nearly 7:30 in the evening. Be interesting to see how warm things get over the next few days. Moving on then, let's have a look at the current temperatures globally in terms of the anomaly through the first 12 days of July. We do have a warmer than average western areas of Europe. Most of Europe, in fact, away from Sweden and Finland, is largely warmer than average. We've seen very hot conditions across parts of Turkey. Very distinct east-west split over Turkey. Let's say zoom in into Europe, actually. You can see here, this is quite an interesting contrast. Colder than average across the east, warmer than average across the west of Turkey. Temperatures as high as 47 Celsius, I think, in recent times. We've warmed things up over Western Russia, Ukraine, up into Lithuania, Belarus, Latvia, get myself confused a wee bit about the Baltic nations there. But you can see here, Poland, the majority of central and eastern and south Poland is actually around about average. Then you get into Germany, Low Countries, France, Iberia. Up until the 12th, up until the 8th of July, we actually had below average temperatures across Western Scotland. That is now changing. That's turning around big time now, given the fact that we've had 5 days into the low, mid, even high 20s across the majority of Scotland. Northern Italy has been below average across this region in the foothills of the Alps. The reason for that is heavy rainfall in recent times has been suppressing the temperatures warmer than average across the Balkan region here. Let's move on to Asia. We've continued to see a healthy Indian monsoon, hence why we've got below average conditions central and northern portions of India, in the southwest of China. Very warm across eastern China, and the contrast between a colder than average west versus warmer than average east. We've had a corridor of very heavy rainfall. Jim Yang on Twitter has been posting some very impressive videos of the flash flooding, 300 millimeters of rain within a 12, even 6 hour period in parts of central China has been incredible. We've seen a colder than average, believe it or not, Saudi Arabia into Iraq, down into the United Arab Emirates through the first half of July. Temperatures have been slightly subpar for this time of the year in this part of the world, traditionally the hottest part of the world, really, away from perhaps northern Mexico and southwestern United States at this time of the year. Looking at Africa then, you can see here that we've got quite a mixture of warm versus cool. Several areas seeing some fairly large below average anomalies here. Moving down into Australia, obviously approaching midpoint of winter here. You've got a mixture of warm versus cool. Again, into the southern hemisphere, or the majority of it anyway, it's been cold and average across the majority of South America in recent times, particularly so Paraguay, Uruguay, into southern Brazil. Major flooding again across that Rio Grande do Sul region of southern Brazil in recent times. Moving back into the northern hemisphere then, and let's have a look at North America in terms of temperature anomaly. Largely warm than average, with the exceptions of the Northwest Territories, southern Yukon, into the north of British Columbia here, Texas, Oklahoma. We've seen obviously devastating flash flooding. We've seen quite ongoing wetter than average conditions in this part of the southern plains. So therefore we've been seeing below average temperatures as a consequence. Even central portions of California is actually below average, away from the far north and south of the state into Arizona, up into northern portions of California, Nevada, Utah, down into Arizona, Colorado. All these places warmer than average. We've got heat building across the Pacific Northwest, across some parts of the central tier of the country as well. We're seeing some drought conditions potentially starting to build here. So let me see here if there's anything else to show before I move on. Let's have a quick look then at more videos then coming out of the Weather Monitor Twitter page here. Bear with a second here. So this is parts of France this afternoon. Again, underneath those big cells that developed. So, like we've seen in the visible satellite imagery, big storms blowing up over southern France as well. This is again, I don't know how to pronounce that. The Guada, is it? The Guadala is a city and municipality in Catalonia, Spain. Look at this here, by the way. And I'm sure this is the case, but imagine going on holiday and having that versus 32 Celsius in the Central Highlands this afternoon. That would be pretty gutting, I have to be honest. This was the scene in parts of Madhya Pradesh. Obviously, the monsoon has been very healthy. Significant cooling within the Arabian Sea, by the way, because we've had persistent southwesterly winds coming around the western and northern flank of the Mascarene High. That has been stronger than usual and has been driving a lot of warm, moist southwesterly winds into the Indian subcontinent, enhancing that monsoon that has been ongoing. So there's the scene again. That's Zaragoza in Spain. This is the scenes, by the way, in Lithuania. Is there anything else? This was in Mexico back on the 10th of July. Another place that's been cooler and wet than average over the last several weeks. I remember just a year or so ago, we had drought and outstanding record-breaking heat day after day. So what a contrast this is. You go from an El Nino to a La Nina, and this is what happens in places such as Mexico. This was the scene in Latvia, damaging hailstorm. was the scenes in parts of Latvia. Another big eruption of the Luotobi Laki volcano in Indonesia. Be interesting to see if this has any impact, by the way, because that big first eruption, I think, several days ago, a week ago, I think released ash. Richard probably could tell me more than I know myself, but I'm sure this went up to about 18, 20 plus thousand feet into the atmosphere. I think it went even higher than that. That was one of the bigger, higher elevated releases of volcanic ash in some time. I could be wrong about that. Again, flooding in parts of India. This was the scene, by the way, in Fujian in China. 320 millimeters of rain falling within the space of a few hours. Yeah, so Laki did reach part of the stratosphere, which obviously is the important thing. When it gets into the stratosphere, it has more potential influence in terms of weather here. So we'll watch this space going forward, at least anyway. This was in Inner Mongolia, northeastern China. Again, flash flooding, 10th of July. So again, you get that kind of seasonal frontal system colliding with cool versus warm, and you get major rainfalls, and some of the biggest rainfall totals in the space of hours can affect this part of the world. We also seen 100 millimeters of rainfall in parts of Tokyo, and this was the scenes. So I'm assuming that's water coming off the top of a roof. I imagine that. I don't think it's an inner city waterfall, but it looks like that, doesn't it? Yeah, there was over 100 millimeters of rain fell within the space of a few hours in Tokyo back a few days ago, which I believe was record breaking. Let's move on to this was, by the way, in Saudi Arabia. So remember, slightly colder than average temperatures in Saudi Arabia in recent weeks. And to see this, pretty unusual, given the fact that we're in the heart of the dry season in Saudi Arabia. Heat is usually just a daily thing. Sunshine, yeah, you get dust storms and whatnot, but you don't tend to get much in the way of thunderstorm activity. This was the scene in Romania a few days ago as well. There was a level 2, very high level for convective activity over far eastern and southeastern Europe via Estofex a few days ago. Moving into the southern hemisphere, approaching midwinter. This was the scene Mount Hotham in Victoria in Australia. So folks that don't like the heat, this is probably just a teaser. Turbo Stream saying, do volcanoes affect the weather? I often wonder if the big eruptions affect things. It must have an effect at some point. You would think, yes, Turbo Stream, they do have effect on the weather. Richard Trott would probably have a little bit more knowledge on this than me, but certainly when they are big enough, you look at some of the biggest eruptions in years gone by. You've got the year without a summer. Can't remember what decade ago that was, but basically the release of all the materials into the atmosphere, into the stratosphere, circled the world. It kind of eventually kind of shielded a large percentage of the sun out from reaching Earth. Temperatures globally dropped, and we have seen that even in more recent times as well, where the actual global temperature drops as a consequence of big volcanic eruptions. But they do have to be powerful. Yeah, 1816, the year without a summer, says Paul. Thank you very much, Paul, for helping me out with that year. I couldn't remember. But there's what was it? I'm trying to remember what year as well. I don't know if Mount St. Helens had an impact globally on temperature, but there was, what was it? Pinatubo erupted Even in not that, what, 1990? Am I right in saying that? You can let me know, Richard or Paul, what year. It just completely escapes me at the moment here. But we have seen recent occurrences where the global temperature has fallen due to the release of big volcanic eruptions. Massive thank you to Braemar, D-Side and Donside Weather. Thank you, Chris, for the very kind $4.99 donation. That is very generous of you, my friend. And yeah, I just greatly appreciate the ongoing support that everybody provides. But thank you, Chris, for the kind donation, my friend. Looking on then, let's have a look at the extreme temperatures around the world. And then I want to look at a couple of things before I close off. Mount St. Helens 1980, says Paul. Don't know what, I'm not 100% sure whether that had any impact from a climate point of view. It may have, it may not have. Good evening to Stevie 1969. Could really go at doing a snow angel in the snow right now. Yes, I'm sure a few folks would like to do that, Steve. At the moment, Stevie should have said sorry, but yeah, this is global extremes around the world. Maximiliano Herrera. We did have a temperature. This is from a couple of days ago, but the temperatures of 118 degrees Fahrenheit in Phoenix, Arizona. So let me see here. Extraordinary heat in Texas. Some records fallen in several places. 36.8, original record 36.5. Today in 2 stations broke a July record in Antu. Let me see here. In Portugal, June 2025. There's a little bit of skepticism over that 46.6 in terms of the location of that weather station here. I don't want to get into that one too much at the moment, but there is a little bit of debate going around in social media with regards to the location. Some of these Spanish and Portuguese weather stations have a tendency to be placed in questionable locations, shall we say. That's the best thing to say. But anyway, 46.6. I believe that record has been finalised from the Portuguese. The 46.0 probably finalised from the Spanish as well. Harsh heat temperatures as high as 46.4, and we're likely to see even hotter temperatures. High elevations, 30 Celsius, even at 1,500 metres above sea level. Moving on then, and we've got obviously the record heat, 47 degrees Fahrenheit plus in northern Africa. Just see if there's anything else. Ukraine, we've been seeing some hot temperatures in the Donbass region. Daytime 40s and nighttime 26 Celsius. Looking down into Kenya then, again, all about the record heat. Parts of India, minimum temperatures 29 Celsius, again, hottest July night. So if you think it's hot in the UK, consider yourself probably lucky that we don't have 29, 30, 31 Celsius overnight temperatures in this country. That would certainly be pretty intense stuff, I would imagine. The first minus 80 Celsius recorded on the 8th of July at the Dom Fuji automatic weather station in Antarctica with minus 81.6. This is the first minus 80 of the season, I believe, down in Antarctica. A provisional minimum. This is by Stefano de Battista. Let's see here if there's anything else worth showing. Lots about heat records. We've been seeing incredible heat across the Koreas, Japan, eastern portions of China. No, let's move on then. This is, by the way, the ECMWF 850 projections for next Monday. Not this upcoming Monday, the following Monday. Talking about another surge of hot weather coming in. And this is something that I am buying into. The reasons why I am is because the MJO is in a similar position that has allowed the buildup of heat and high pressure in the western areas of Europe so far this June and through the first half of July. Yes, we do have a reduction in pressure, cooler conditions, wetter conditions as a consequence, but then that heat always tries to rebuild back north. Looks as if the ECMWF is trying to do that as we move towards next weekend and the beginning of the following week. Another surge of very hot conditions, 20 Celsius at 850, moving up into the spine of France, Low Countries, Germany, glancing below into the southeast of the UK. Big contrast, though, to the GFS for the same day. It looks as if it's a very, very close call, but there is model differential in terms of this next surge of heat. Okay, let me see here. Let's have a look at tropicaltidbits.com. I want to show you the MJO because this is quite important. A little bit technical. I try to avoid that as much as I can, albeit I probably don't succeed in avoiding talking about technical stuff in these videos. That's more for the weekly European outlooks. But I want to show you the MJO because we have a quiet Pacific and Atlantic in terms of tropics. And the reasons for that is fairly straightforward. We've got rising motion over the Pacific, sinking motion over the East Pacific and the Atlantic Basin. And therefore, we have a tendency to lean towards higher pressure towards Europe. Look at this here. This is off the GFS. Strong upward motion over the West Pacific, even into the East Indian Ocean. Widespread subsidence, East Pacific, Americas, Atlantic. What is going to happen is we are going to eventually start to see the greens pushing more eastwards over the Pacific and attempting to get into the Atlantic. What this may do is it may create a cattle prod to the atmosphere and try and recast the atmosphere further eastwards here. It's been a repeating cycle through the first half of summer. And I showed you this very briefly a couple of days ago. This is from Paul Roundy, and it's a correlation between the MJO and let me just, if I can find it, that is. So this is the various phases of the MJO against the extratropical circulation, and it shows you essentially the ridges and the troughs. Now there is grey areas in this. It depends on the amplitude of the Magellan oscillation. It depends on how much influence it can have on the middle latitude jet stream, the waviness of the pattern, the anticyclonic wave breaking. But there is evidence to support that we're in currently a phase 4/5 MJO, and we've generally got high pressure in control. If we look at this chart here, you've got generally higher pressure over the Northeast Atlantic, UK and Ireland. We've got lower pressure down towards the central and western Mediterranean basin. If we go into phases, say 6 in about a week to 10 days, we have got still high pressure central and eastern Europe, low pressure out towards the, I know it's hard to see this, I do apologize for this, but this is towards the 30th of July. And you can see here, lower pressure to the west, higher pressure to the east. That would signal systems trying to push into the UK and Ireland from the west, from the Atlantic, but also hot conditions trying to lift northwards between the high to the east and the low to the west. Let's have a look at the model here for heights, upper level heights of the GFS ensemble here. We do have lower pressure, lower heights coming in as we move into the early portions of next week. But I want to show you this here. This is the 500 millibars. Keep it in mind the MJO correlation here. This is the upcoming 5 days. We've got positive heights over Iberia, positive heights to the north, and negative in between that. If we play through this loop, you can see here that we've got an attempt at higher pressure trying to move in, but you notice here that we've got no clear-cut ridge or trough here. Essentially, you could argue that there's probably lower heights as opposed to positive heights in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Let's have a look at the CFSV2 weeklies and see what it's showing here. You've got the negative to the west, high pressure to the east. That's that kind of phase 4 or 5 of the MJO correlation here. Let's look back at Paul Roundy's page. So you've got the negative to the west of the UK and Ireland. This is the UK and Ireland here. So you've got the trough over the Atlantic. You've got the ridge over Europe here. And the upcoming 7 days off the CFSV2. Very similar look. Into week 2, you can see here that we've got a negative just to the west of the UK and Ireland. But generally high pressure dominating, if you notice here. Into week 3, you've got more negative to the north. Higher pressure to the south, which is interesting. And that's quite different in a sense to what we have at the moment. And what that could be signaling, this is bearing in mind the 26th of July through the 2nd of August, what this could be suggesting is the MJO, and it's in upward motion in a broad scale, moving eastwards and changing the pattern within the mid to high latitudes of the atmosphere. August is going to be different, I think, anyway. I think we're going to see more back and forth. I think we've still got opportunity for plenty more heat, potentially late this month, but also into the month of August. But if we can get the tropics going, we have tropical storms and hurricanes developing. They, depending on where they move, then has an impact on the jet stream, the strength, the waviness or lack of waviness within the jet. These are all factors that are getting looked at the moment here. So I hope that makes sense. That's certainly my thinking at the moment anyway. I'm getting pretty warm and I'm a wee bit tired. So I'm probably going to cut this actually a little bit short this evening, if you don't mind. But back again this time next week. So this week and next week, it's Saturday at 7 p.m. and then it'll probably go back to normal afterwards. Good evening to Frog's Legs, Matthew and JL. I don't know if I've said good evening to yourselves so far. If I have, I do apologise. I think I've already mentioned JL, but I don't know about Frog's Legs, Matthew anyway. But yeah, just been a bit of a long day. Not had a great deal amount of sleep. Got 44 concurrent viewers at the moment here. So before you leave today's stream, be sure to hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button. 100 away from 7,000 subscribers here in the channel. So I would greatly appreciate a sub. Absolutely free content, unbiased, unhyped, 7 days a week. Tropical Outlook will be recorded later on after this video, and then it will be released tomorrow afternoon. So let me just see here. My friend travelled to London. This is from Richard. My friend travelled to London today. Spent a fortune on a hotel, train tickets for Hyde Park tomorrow, but very last ELO concert ever cancelled as Jeff Lynne is not well. Sorry, that's in reference to a conversation I think that Paul and Richard are having here. Sorry, I'm trying to get back into the chat here again. It's like an unwelcome visitor coming to the table in the middle of a conversation. I am at the moment. I think that's the best way to acknowledge that one. So sorry about that, Richard and James. Anyway, let's round things up. It's been a long enough day. I hope you're enjoying the good weather. Let's make the most of it, because it is going to change as we move into the early portions of this week. It'll be interesting to see if it builds back in. Chris at the Braemar Ballot D-side and Donside weather saying 32.2 is the latest data pulled from Aviemore. So, yeah, very, very impressive, 32.2. Chris, that's for sure. Spock's daughter also tuning in. Massive thank you to folks perhaps tuning in from the United States. Thanks to Kim for tuning in. Thanks to Laura Johnson for tuning in for the first time in a little while. It's always good to see folks, good to see new faces, good to see folks that haven't been on in a wee while. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll be back with the Tropical Outlook tomorrow, and then the European Outlook. We'll look at the mid to late half of July in the European Outlook on Monday. So stay tuned for that. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I'll be back again tomorrow with the Tropical Outlook. Bye-bye.